Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Copies sold out.
Wow.
In 1 hour. In 1 hour.
In an hour.
So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, this was really thrilling for me.
That's crazy.
Because, again, we didn't know what to expect. We knew there would be
Uncharted territory.
Sorry?
It was uncharted territory. You hadn't.
Yeah. And so we were off to a great start. And we also, what we did with the New York Comic Con copies is, I'll show you this one again. We had several different variants, and this is the New York City variant. You can see on the number 1 up here, if you look at that, it has an NYC. So that's very, that's
I see it. Yeah.
And then over here, it has a number. So you were getting issue 960 of 1100. So only 1100 made of the VV blue and VV red, and the other ones we did about 600.
Wow. Cool.
So these are very limited. I was able to charge 15 to 25 bucks a piece for them raw, and if they were in a CGC holder like this, we were selling them, so I think for about $100 a piece.
Oh wow.
And we did incredibly well for our first convention, and it was so cool because I had Claudia fly in from Rome.
Yeah.
I had one of our cover artists, Andres Labrada from Miami, came in, and we were all at the booth, and we had this really beautiful booth set up. And I hired 2 of my friends to be models for the character.
Yeah.
And so we had this really great energy, really great fans and people coming up to us. And then at night, Vivi would throw these parties, and we'd go to the parties, and people would walk up to us and go, "Oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. I love your work." And we're like sitting there going, "What is happening here?" It's just crazy.
Yeah.
We even make a bottle of wine every year for our customers from Metropolis. So this year we did the addiction bottle. So
I love it.
See that there.
That's cool, dude.
We send those out to customers. And so our character, her name is Nicotino, nicotine, the addiction.
Yeah.
She is a doctor fighting drug addiction. She's the daughter of a broken family. Her mother was a drug addict. Her father left because he couldn't handle the mother's drug addiction. She's adopted. She decides to become laser focused so that nobody else has to go through what she went through as a child. She becomes a doctor and is fighting drug addiction. She's gotten so good at it that the local drug cartels look at her like she's bad for business, and they want to make an example out of her. They want to set her up to look like she's a drug addict, discredit her. So they kidnap her and they shoot her up with a cocktail of designer drugs and leave her for dead.
Oh.
And she does die. But later, the chemicals mix with the blood in her body and bring her back to life. Now she's got a second chance at life and an uncanny ability. From her slightest touch, she can inject any type of drug into a person's body. Thus begins the adventures of the addiction. Yeah. And so we have these tie-ins with food. The story has action. The story has social relevance. The story has comedy. The story has romance. She's got a boyfriend. Before, she was so focused on work, she never had a boyfriend. Now the romance is a very big part of this. And her boyfriend's name is Enzo. And so Enzo, in this relationship, he's Lois Lane and she's Superman. So it's sometimes a little difficult for a New York Italian guy to put up with something like that, but they work it out.
Yeah.
And so it's been a labor of love and a real passion for me to be able to create this comic book. And it takes me full circle to what I dreamed about doing as a small child, making my own comic books, to actually publishing one.
Yeah.
And taking my business acumen and knowledge from running Metropolis and Comic Connect and being able to apply that, although at a novice level, because I don't have as much experience as somebody who's been publishing comic books for 20, 30 years.
Right.
But what I lack for in that, I make up for in my knowledge of business and how to market and promote. And what I've been able to do, unlike many of the other people in independent comic book publishers, is create a value and create a following and a fan base that's really passionate. A few days ago on X, somebody posted, "Hey Vincent, when are you coming out with issue number 2?" And I wrote, "We're making a very big announcement very soon." And I first, for like a few hours later, I saw, like 1,000 people, which is great. 1,000 people liking that. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, wow, it's pretty cool. And the next day it was 12,000. And then the
Wow.
next day it was 21,000 people
Oh my
liking
goodness
my
gracious.
comments on this. And like, I get choked up talking about this because, again, this is like a dream come true for me.
Yeah.
Um, Being able to buy and sell comic books, being able to do interviews like this, being able to share my story with other people. Hopefully, somebody that's watching your show, maybe they'll be inspired by something I did, and they'll take that chance to become an entrepreneur, to become a business owner, or whatever they're going to do in their life, but to
Yeah.
live life with passion and try to attack things from this way of like, I always remember like when I was in college, or people, I'd be at a party and a girl would, I'd start talking to a girl and she'd say, "Oh, so what do you do?" Or this is right after I graduated. "What do you
Mm.
do for a living?" "I sell comic books." And if they didn't walk away at that point, they would say, "No, seriously, what do you do?" And I'm like,
Right.
"I buy and sell comic books." "Can you make a living doing that?"
Right.
"Yes, I can." So you get this kind of chip on your shoulder. I know how Tom Brady feels. I know how a few other guys feel. Like Michael Jordan
Yeah.
has that kind of chip on their shoulder. I had that chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to prove everybody wrong. A lot of that was also, sometimes a little bit of doubt in your own mind, where you're like,
Yeah.
"Can I do this? Can I actually do this?" And so nowadays, when I go to parties, it's quite the opposite. As soon as somebody hears I buy and sell comics, "Did you see this movie? Did you see that movie? Oh, do you like that storyline?" People really know about comic books. I mean, it's become part of the pop culture lexicon in a very big
Right.
way.
Yeah. It's more in the mainstream than it's ever been.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, it's been a really wonderful ride, and I love what I do. It is not easy. Making a comic book has been
Mhm.
harder than I could possibly imagine. In fact, right now we're working on our deadlines. Deadlines tomorrow for the direct market issue of number 1, which will go to comic stores in July, and we're getting it done now, and the advertising and the promotion and the my thankfully my wife Josephine is a designer, art director, and she's been helping us on her off hours to put the ads together. That was another thing. I believe very heavily that, hey, why can't I get advertisers for my comic book?
Right.
And I did, and I got advertisers. And in the old comic books, they had a letters page where people would write to the creators, and the creators would answer back. So I went on X and I said, hey, who's got a question? You're going to win a prize. And if you get chosen. So I chose 4 people from X, and we posted we're going to put their names and or their handles on the letters page. And that's a really old school fun thing that we're going to add to this. So
But it
it's
adds
been,
interactivity, and that's a big deal.
yeah,
That's a big deal.
yeah,
So that's cool.
yeah.
That's really
So,
cool, man.
and like Thursday, I'm heading out to LA for WonderCon, and I'll see a bunch of customers from the West Coast. I've got people to meet, and I'm really excited about that. Every day is something else. I often say like the equivalent of Christmas morning, because we get a
Mhm.
box and you never know what it is,
Yeah.
and sometimes you do know what it is, and it's still exciting to open it up.
Right.
A few weeks ago, I had brokered a deal on an original stormtrooper helmet from Star Wars: A New Hope. So it was a sand trooper helmet, which was very distinct from the rest of the stormtroopers in that it was from the scene where I think it's the Millennium Falcon is escaping, and they go, "Stop! They're getting away! Blast them!" It's one of the
Yeah.
stormtroopers. So it's one of 6 helmets that was made, and it's
Wow.
only one of 3 that still exists as far as we know.
Oh my goodness.
And to hold this thing in my hand, it's a pop culture artifact.
Yeah, it is.
It was mind blowing. And
I
what
bet it
was
would.
shocking to me, how thin it was. It was
Mm.
no thicker than like a plastic jug of milk, like the
Mm.
jug, like it was
Wow.
really thin. And I was like, how did they shoot a movie with this thing?
Yeah.
And it was just so cool. So I mean, I'm standing right next to me. This is the cosmic cube from the first Captain America movie.
Mhm.
This is when in the comic books, this was a really big deal with Captain America and the Red Skull, and in the movie, this was showcased. So I bought this at it's a prop from the movie, and I bought it when Marvel released a bunch of props, and it's really cool to have something like that.
That's awesome.
Um, I also collect Bruce Lee memorabilia. Here's Bruce Lee's first printed instructional
Ooh,
comic
there you
book.
go.
Um, with
I love Bruce Lee.
yeah, me too. And
Grew up watching him.
I collect his signed checks. I also happen to own the his only signed movie contract from 1971, signed with Raymond Chow from Golden Harvest. And yeah, I collect mostly comics and original art, but I also like um, Bruce Lee memorabilia, ray guns from the 1930s to the 1950s. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm not thinking of right now. But the whole idea here is, if there's one lesson or one edict or one something that I could say to everybody out there, is really try to find something you love doing, and don't worry so much about the money. The money may come or may not come in the way you want it to. Who knows? But I guarantee you'll be happier doing something you're passionate about
Yeah.
than if you're just pushing paper, or pushing a computer screen or whatever
Yeah.
else. And for some people, that's also okay. That's, some people want to have a job where they just do their thing and separate and leave. I'm never off. I'm working weekends. I'm working late at night. I get texts and calls from customers on a Sunday, and it is what it is. I'm the equivalent of what it was like to be a doctor, I guess, in the 50s with house calls. But, I don't have any specific time off, so to speak. But again, I think if you love what you're doing, you'll be happier than if you don't.
Well, it's that old saying, right? If you do what you love, you never work a day,
Yeah.
So I have a couple of real quick questions.
Sure.
So let's go back to your childhood for just a second. What was your favorite thing? I think we know the answer to this, but what was your favorite thing about growing up in Rockaway?
Well, I loved the beach. I loved all things to do with the ocean. And I had a very, very strong fear of the water as a little boy. I didn't learn how to swim, comparatively speaking, to my friends at that time till much later. I was like maybe 9 or 10 years old when I learned how to swim, where most of my friends knew how to swim when they were 5. I think my brothers stupidly took me to see Jaws when it came out, or maybe it was a re-release. I don't know, but that's not a good movie to show a little kid. That's not a good movie for adults to see. But I loved the ocean. I loved anything to do with the sea.
Your mom
that
did
was
too.
really special.
You got that from your mom. You got that from your mom.
The love of the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, think about it. What did you say to your dad?
Yeah, you want to live.
Have one more, and then you're going to buy me a house on the beach.
Yeah. It was. I think for her, Brooklyn was very urban.
Yeah.
And concrete jungle type of place, and she wanted to have more of a suburban home for us. And it was a very unique and wonderful place to grow up. After Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012, I was heartbroken. I went back there, and it was a place that for many years I never wanted to go back to, because it represented small town USA for me, and I wanted to experience something beyond that. Sure. But at a certain point in your life, I believe you get nostalgic. Not everybody, but for me, I did. And then when this hurricane hit, I was heartbroken. The entire peninsula was under anywhere from 3 to 6 feet of water.
It was rough.
So I went in and I found a house to buy there. And my goal with buying is reinvest in the neighborhood, have a beautiful investment property, a beautiful place. It's a second house off the beach. I was so happy, so thrilled. And also to promote Rockaway. So anytime friends came over, now they got to see this beautiful place where I grew up. So that's been really special for me. It's like a full circle type of thing for me. And since then, I've also been able to invest in a few other properties there. So to me, I really do believe that you should invest in what you know, but you should also don't put all your eggs in one basket, because you never know. So while the majority of my accumulated wealth would be in comic books and original comic art, I've also diversified into real estate, as well as stock market, and even a little bit of crypto, and probably a few other things. The only thing I wish I had done earlier and more was precious metals, because I've seen a lot of friends do very well over time, collecting, holding on to precious metals, gold, platinum, you name it. So so that's I did love growing up by the beach. In fact, I didn't know you're supposed to root for New York teams, so my favorite football team is the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, there you go.
I love Dolphins as a kid. Yeah, so
I love it.
Yeah.
Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Mm, that's a great question. Huh. I'd have to say there are several. My mother and father definitely, and I was very blessed to have parents who, in 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 one way or another, were able to instill within me a belief and confidence in myself. My
Mhm,
mother always told me I could do anything I wanted to do with my life as long as I worked hard enough at it.
mhm.
My father always made sure that school was number one with me and that I was getting good grades. He, unfortunately for me, he was the guy when I brought a 95 home on a test, he'd ask me where the other 5 points were, which could be very stressful for a kid growing up. But at the same time, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't always striving for that.
Hey, there's
Uh,
something to be said for standards.
yeah, and my father always taught me knowledge is power. He taught me ownership is key. He taught me uh, don't ever be tired.
Mm,
And so those were a lot of things that really helped me out. And my mother was like number one cheerleader, always in my corner and just rooting me on. And anything I did that was good was like a pot of gold. I was
yeah.
just it was really great to have parents like that. My older brothers were also really great. Um, and some of my older friends and some of my friends as well were influential in different ways. But then I'd also say that when I was around 16, 17 years old, I studied martial arts and I studied Jeet Kune Do, and I got really into Bruce Lee, who that was his martial art.
Mhm,
And I read his books, and it was my introduction to Eastern philosophy, the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Uh, there was another book called Absorb What Is Useful, and then the second part is Discard What Is Not.
mhm,
So the whole idea there is to take, first of all, the whole idea of his martial art was Jeet Kune Do meant the way of the intercepting fist. So the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
mhm,
So in ways, I was able to take what he was teaching for martial arts and apply those things to business
mhm.
in conscious and subconscious ways. Also, like everybody knows, be like water.
Mhm.
Uh, that's one of the things that Bruce often said. So I would take like this idea that I can change, I can morph, I can be crashing down. I can find a way through the tiniest cracks. No matter what, I'm gonna find a way to succeed, and
Right.
that's what to me what water means.
Yeah.
So so Bruce Lee was definitely a big influence. Then later in my 20s, mid 20s, I found a mentor who is still my mentor to this day and who's been an incredible help. His name is Billy. And he taught me so many things about myself and helped me work through a lot of stuff because no matter how idyllic or perfect your childhood may look, we all have different types of baggage that we carry with us through
True.
life. And
True.
being able to learn to combat that or understand it and be self conscious about it,
Mm.
and to be able to become healthier by understanding it in different ways. Um, and that I think that's been a really a big help. So I have a lot of different influences in my life. Also, I would say was a big influence for me when I was in my mid 20s. I remember still was unsure about what I wanted to do, and then one night I was like, woke up at like 4 in the morning, and the TV was still on, and I see this infomercial with this really tall guy with big teeth, and I go, "Who's this guy, Tony Robbins?"
That's right.
And
That's
so
my guy.
I got the 30 days CD set, and I did it. I did every single day. I still have my notebook, and
Mhm.
one of the best things I learned from Tony Robbins, and you've heard me say it a couple times, "Live life with passion" was a great quote of his. But also the idea of how to combat procrastination,
Mhm.
and the way you combat procrastination is by putting it off.
Yeah.
So it's so simple, but it's so effective. But anytime you're thinking you have to do something, just do it.
Yeah.
Just like the old Nike ads, just get off your ass and actually do it. And
Right.
when you take that type of mentality, it's so simple, but it is so powerful. And you apply that to different challenges and different issues,
Mhm.
you will cut through that like a knife through hot butter, like a hot knife through butter, whatever the
Hot knife
saying
through
is.
butter. Exactly. There
Yeah,
you
hot knife through butter. And so those were the influence I would say that really helped me a lot in different ways. and different points in my life, but I think it always comes back to a foundation of my parents, and I'll be eternally grateful for what they taught me, especially coming over to the United States with nothing. And my father, even to the day he passed, was not incredibly fluent in English. You know, he spoke a very broken English, but he was charming as hell, and people loved him. And he also was very, focused, and whatever he wanted to do, he got it done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that answer for sure, 100%.
So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I really loved history. I
Mhm.
loved art, but I never felt confident enough to pursue art. As much as I just told you all the things I said,
Right.
art was one of these areas where um, there were friends of mine who were so naturally gifted as artists,
Yeah.
and it was so hard for me to
Yeah.
draw. And I got better at it when I studied it, but I didn't have the willpower to continue studying it all the time. And I guess that if I really wanted it that bad, I would have done it. So I
Mhm.
must not have wanted it that bad, because there were a lot of other things that I wanted really bad that I made happen.
Right.
So I loved art, but I loved social studies, history. When I graduated from high school, I won the social studies award in graduation,
There you
and I was really proud of that. Even though there were guys who probably could have told you dates and battles and things like that that maybe I wouldn't have memorized, but I think an overall understanding of what was going on in history, I had a very good grasp of that, and also I was a pretty good test taker. So that was my favorite subject in high school. When I went to college, I really wanted to do advertising, but we didn't have an advertising department, so I went to marketing. And to this day, I still use certain things that I learned in marketing, and I use a lot of what I learned in marketing designing this comic book and coming
Yeah.
up with how do I sell these,
Right.
which artists, and how do I make something look. In fact, I can show you. There's a red copy. Let's see. I'll
Is your
post here.
is your bachelor's degree in marketing?
Yeah, yeah. So
And
the
then
red copy.
you mentioned something about Budapest really fast.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hold on,
So
hold on. Let's see that cover for a second. Let's see
yeah,
that.
so it's basically what I did here is I always loved the look of a female character in a suit, a men's
Okay.
suit. And then I also loved Reservoir Dogs. It was one of my favorite movies.
Gotcha. So this is like the
Very,
other one, but this is red instead of blue.
yeah. There are actually 6 different covers. These are the
Gotcha.
Labrada covers, a red and a blue, and then there's the Grimaldi's version, which was based off of this with the
Gotcha.
Grimaldi's pizza box over here.
Yep. Gotcha.
So sorry, I should have had all these ready for you.
No, it's okay. You're fine.
The whole
That's
point,
cool.
the whole point is I drew inspiration for this cover from Reservoir Dogs, and I
Yeah.
told my artist, "This is what I want. I want her eating a slice of pizza. She just beat a bunch of bad
Yeah.
guys. The pizza box on the floor,
Yeah.
and I want to use the colors from the poster of the Reservoir Dogs, the red and the white. So that's what
Yeah.
we did. And then I always wondered why they called it Reservoir Dogs, because it didn't really make sense as a title. I
Right.
later found out that it's because when Tarantino was younger, he used to get the words rendezvous and reservoir confused. So he
Really?
called them Reservoir Dogs, but it makes more sense that they were rendezvous dogs
Yeah.
because the rendezvous back at the warehouse at the end of the movie.
Well, that's a cool story. I
So
didn't know that.
I put a little ghosted sign here that says rendezvous dog.
Oh, there you go. I love it.
So that was like an homage to Tarantino. Who knows? Maybe one day he'll see my comic book and get a kick out of it.
Little tip of the hat. I love it.
We already have some interest in making a movie out of it, so we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, you'll have to hit Tarantino up to make the movie.
Yeah, well, he's only making one more, and I don't know if he's going to do The Addiction.
Well,
So
he
you never know.
he might make an exception for you. You never know.
You never know. You don't know until you ask.
Hey, the worst he can say is no, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's another thing that I always tell people is like, if you don't ask, you're not going to know. So you've got to take a shot.
Yeah.
So like for our second issue of The Addiction, we have a scene where Nikki is teaching Enzo how to eat soup dumplings. I reached out to a company called Mila.
Mhm.
They sell frozen soup dumplings. In fact, Simu Liu, the star of the Shang-Chi movie from Marvel, is a part owner in it because he ordered them. They sent some to his home, and he was out of town. His parents were at the home, and his parents, who are Chinese, loved them.
Oh yeah.
So since they loved them, he knew it was good, and then he invested in the company. So I reached out to them, and they loved the idea of being involved in a comic book, and they said user experience is really important to them. So we're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do the promotion with them, but they're in issue number 2. And number 3, Enzo works as a barista in Manhattan. So I went to my favorite coffee shop, told them about the comic book. I told them I want them involved, and it's called Culture. They own a couple of locations in Manhattan. They make the best chocolate chip cookies. Their coffee is great, but their chocolate chip cookies are unbelievable.
Really?
And they were like, yeah, we're in. So it was like this amazing, it was too easy. We're like, oh my God, people really love comic books. Even if they're not into comic books, they get it, that this is something special to be a part of. So I think in the history of comic books, I may be the first person who did product placement in a comic book. And if it's successful, sorry, not if, it is successful in this first go around. In our second miniseries, we're going to figure out other ways, and this time we're going to charge for it. So I did a first go around where we're not. The second time we'll do that. So we just got to figure out what the heck those food companies are. So that's it. It's just everything is exciting and fun, and I pour my heart and soul into everything I do with this. I hope you guys can hear the passion with which I speak and the way I want to represent my business and the world of comic books. It's something that should, in my opinion, is the greatest American art form. And I would sit and argue with anybody about why it is. I think it's just amazing. It's great for creativity, escapism, unorthodox or alternative investments, collectible, fun. And so you have all these different things that go into it. And it's inspired people in so many different ways, whether they become a comic book artist, a writer, a colorist, or anything like that. Also, I found really interesting over the years, I've sold comic books to people who are lawyers, doctors, policemen, firemen, who have said to me, the reason that I chose my vocation was because I wanted to help people. And I knew I'd never have superpowers, but if I became a cop, I could help people. If I became a lawyer, I could help. And this is just like, blew my mind away. It seems so obvious, but it was so refreshing to hear this from people, and really just amazing.
Well, the value that they glean from it is that's really cool. That's got to make you feel good.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have two final questions that we have to wrap up. So the second to last question is, you mentioned earlier that you figured out a way to take customer service to a whole nother level. Explain to us what that looked like and what that was specifically.
Okay, so first thing I would do is I was incredibly personable at conventions. I'd sit and talk to people. I wasn't just like, give me your money and give them a comic book.
Right.
And I'm not saying that other dealers didn't talk to people, but from watching my parents, from watching my father in the restaurant business, watching my mother at home, watching my brothers, I developed salesmanship and qualities that were kind of almost like inside of me that just came out. And I was able to form lasting impressions and relationships with people based on that. I also went the extra mile to explain things, to talk to people about stuff, whether somebody was spending $5 or $150 at the time. I try to treat them with the same amount of respect. One of the first lessons I was taught is don't judge a book by its cover. In other words, if you see a guy at a convention in a bummy t-shirt and sweatpants, maybe he's in a suit all week. And here he's on a Sunday going to a convention. He doesn't want to get dressed up. He wants to dress down. That guy might have a huge checkbook in his pocket or a wad of cash ready to spend. So that was one of the other things I learned very early on, and I stick it in my brain every time I'm out there. And you also learn as a salesman how to qualify people pretty quickly, so that if that guy isn't and maybe isn't even really a buyer, you can qualify them. Sometimes there are people who just want to talk to you and waste your time. And that happens. Sometimes, no matter what, it's time well spent, because something good might come of it out somewhere else. And I try to be very optimistic about that. But other times you might be spinning your wheels. Anyway, I developed my customer service based around how I was at my presence at conventions, my ability to talk to people on the phone, my ability to create great advertisements for buying as well as selling, and keeping customer service very much in the forefront of my business paradigm. I believe to this day, I do believe that's incredibly important. And I think my staff reflects me in a certain way, and in the fact that they're incredibly helpful to people. I do not believe in the edict that the customer is never wrong. there are customers that are wrong.
Mhm.
And, that's okay. As a business owner, you have to decide what your threshold of dealing with somebody's BS is.
Mhm.
And sometimes you have to call them on it and just say, hey, that's it. I'm drawing the line here.
Right.
And I can tell you, anytime I've cut a customer off, my life has actually gotten better because
Yeah.
they're that big a headache for me. And I consider myself a pretty nice guy in this business.
Yeah.
If they pushed me to here
Yeah.
and I just cut them out, and actually I've seen my business kind of increase after that because I don't have to waste time with these people or
Yeah,
energy.
you're spending time on things that are more productive and with
Right.
people that are more productive. Yeah. I mean, that's really, really wise. And I hope people are listening to what you're saying and taking heed, because this is big stuff.
Sometimes I want to say sometimes I need to follow my own advice a little bit quicker.
I know that feeling.
A lot of time.
I know that feeling. One final question.
Sure.
If you were talking to yourself 30 years back, what's the one thing that you would advise yourself 30 years ago to do that's most important?
Don't get married first time. I was young and I was my ex-wife was a very wonderful person, but boy, I wish I hadn't gotten married that
Really?
young. But you know what? I wouldn't be who I am today without that. That
Yeah.
was one great. But if you mean more in a business sense,
I was talking more business, but
well,
I
this could be
appreciate it.
business related too because you do lose a lot when you get divorced.
Hey, it's life advice, right? I mean, come on.
What I would say is that, in all seriousness, I think I got married too young. I was 32, but I definitely think men, especially in New York City, are still growing up when they're in their 30s. Of course, everybody's different, but I would say that you really should give yourself time to figure out who you're going to be because basically what happened with us is we both kind of grew apart.
Sure.
And we both knew it was for the best, but it was still very, very painful.
Yeah.
But going more towards the business side of it, what would I don't know because I don't know if I would be where I am today if I had done anything differently. But huh, that's a really great question. And I'm not sure what the answer is on that. I think I couldn't tell myself to work harder. Um, the only thing I would say that there was one time in 1996 where I was at a convention, it was April 2nd, and I had my 4 best boxes of inventory stolen from me at a convention, and I had no insurance, and I was devastated. I screwed up. So a piece of advice: make sure you get insurance early on.
Right.
Another piece of advice: don't leave your shit alone,
Right.
or even with
Secure,
somebody
right.
you can trust to watch it.
Right.
Don't do that. Cover
Yeah.
your butt.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to look out for your stuff as well as you're going to look out for your own stuff.
It's true.
And so those would be pieces of advice. I would say very strong advice to make sure you get business insurance. It's important. And also if you're in a partnership, getting cross insurance is very important. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. There's so many other things. I also, one of the pieces of advice I would give people is to never stop educating yourself in whatever way it is, whether it's taking a course or just reading a book. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a book on business, although I have read some really great business books and management books and things like that. There are tons of books that you can read and learn from other people's life experiences, or they could be fictional, and you're just learning different lessons from things like that. So continue to educate yourself, continue to embrace the world, and on a personal level. One thing that I found that was very beneficial, especially after I got divorced, and this might sound very crunchy granola, but in some way, shape, or form, to open your heart to the world. I think when you do that, really good things come your way. I believe, again, not to sound too crunchy granola, but I do believe in energy and I believe in karma. I believe in putting out good energy and getting good in return. I think that these are all important things to embrace. And everything I've taught and shared with you guys today are things that I definitely believe in and have helped me to become who I am in my business and in my life. Yeah, and you know what? If anybody out there, you can find me on almost every social media. If you've got a question, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. My name is Vincent Zurzolo. I'm the president of Metropolis Collectibles, CommonConnect.com, and the publisher and co-creator and co-writer of The Addiction.
There you go. I love
You
it.
can buy on shop.theaddiction.co.
I love it. That's awesome. Vincent, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a blast.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.